Welcome into the Monday Smash right here on Warchant TV. For all of you watching on YouTube, on Facebook Live, on X, and listening on the podcast, we say welcome to a full edition of the Monday Smash, special edition on a Thursday night. We knew with Memorial Day on Monday that your schedules would be in flux, so we decided to move this week's program a little bit later to make it easier for everybody to get some cool content. And tonight we're talking Florida State baseball. Tonight we're talking Florida State football and Florida State football recruiting at the end of the program as well. If you're watching on Warchant TV, you can see what I have on the screen here on the Monday Smash presented by State Farm agent Russ Voorhis. I have a one-on-one interview. I got a chance to sit down with Link Jarrett, head baseball coach for Florida State, in the 12 o'clock hour today. We discussed the Tallahassee Regional, Florida State's choice to go 1-2 in the rotation with Carson Dorsey in Game 1 and ace Jamie Arnold in Game 2 on Saturday. Coach Jarrett's decision for Florida State to play in the noon game versus the 6 p.m. game in the Tallahassee Regional. We cover an awful lot in that interview. One thing that we did not talk about is what Coach Jarrett told the media earlier today, which is that pitcher Cam Leiter had a poor midweek bullpen session and will not be available this weekend in the Tallahassee Regional. Extremely unlikely that Cam Leiter will be able to pitch this weekend. We'll see about what comes in the future. So Link Jarrett joins the program at 7:05. Then we unveil. Again, this is all new content that you have not seen yet on the Monday Smash presented by State Farm agent Russ Voorhis. The Warchant Top 40, our first installment of guys who made the cut. You may have seen the video with myself and Gene Williams of players who just missed the cut. It's an awfully deep season for Florida State in terms of the talent pool. Maybe not a ton of A-plus players, but a lot of quality football players. So who made the cut? Ira Schafel and I will discuss that for the better part of 20 minutes, and we'll explain to you how we break it down. The panelists on staff, we have 7 staff members this year contributing to the Warchant Top 40, and we'll discuss those players who just made the list. And then finally, at the end of the hour, towards the latter third of the hour, we have a recruiting roundtable. And this roundtable will feature our own Michael Langston, our own Matt LaSerre, and On3 national analyst Josh Newberg. He has ties, obviously, to the Florida State Network and Florida State Seminoles recruiting. So those three will discuss in a recruiting roundtable just where Florida State is. And I'm sure what will come up this week is the On3 Elite Series that just happened in Nashville and some of the waves that Florida State made in that regard. So we've got you covered here. Link Jarrett starting in just a couple of minutes. He talked to me for a good 15 minutes about the regional. Very exciting stuff. In fact, I'll share with you a nugget I shared with Coach. This is 30 years to the day. 30 years to the day, May 30th, 1994, Link Jarrett's final game inside Dick Howser Stadium as a Florida State baseball player. The Noles that day beat BYU, punching their ticket out of the Tallahassee Regional into the College World Series. 30 years and 1 day later will be his first game inside Dick Howser Stadium, now on the surface of Mike Martin Field as the head coach of Florida State baseball. Pretty cool stuff. And again, the Warchant Roundtable, the Warchant Top 40, followed by the recruiting roundtable, will follow. This is the Monday Smash presented by State Farm agent Russ Voorhis. For all of your needs, trust a Nole, a true Nole through and through, like Russ Voorhis. He's got 2 brick and mortar stores on the east coast of the state of Florida, Jacksonville Beach and Orange Park. But if you live in the Warchant TV network anywhere in the state of Florida, anywhere in the state of Georgia or Alabama, support a true Nole who supports Florida State athletics heavily. This is somebody who takes his discretionary income that he makes, the millions from State Farm Services, and he says, I'm putting it back into Florida State athletics. Russ is an excellent guy to talk Florida State sports with. He often stops by our Warchant events during the year. He's a larger-than-life personality, a larger-than-life Nole, and we are thrilled to have him aboard. Again, it's almost a year now of Russ sponsoring Monday Smash. So for those of you on the podcast, here's how you spell it. RussVorhis.com. That's RussVorhis.com for more information. Again, Russ servicing the states of Florida, Georgia, and Alabama. So without much further ado here on the Monday Smash, I did have a chance to talk to Florida State head baseball coach Link Jarrett. What an incredible turnaround from his first season to his second. 23 wins to 40-plus wins and a top 8 national seed. For the first time in 6 years, Florida State will be hosting a postseason playoff game inside Dick Howser Stadium. It all starts tomorrow, and it all starts to get you ready for it because I got pumped talking to Coach right now on the Monday Smash. We have the honor on the eve of Florida State's Tallahassee Regional to be joined by Florida State head baseball coach Link Jarrett here on Warchant TV for a one-on-one. Coach, first of all, congratulations on a regular season, a very successful one that saw your program earn a top 8 national seed. And thanks for joining us.
No, thank you for having me. It's great. It's a reward. And we talk a lot about from first pitch of this up until the end of the conference tournament, you're not in this conversation or this position if you haven't performed well out of the gate, through the midweeks, through the conference, and even really, quite frankly, through the conference tournament. Like every one of those games has impact and meaning. It's got ramifications. It's hard to be perfect, and clearly we were not. But at the end of the day, when the dust settles, these guys delivered the result that put them in position to not only have this event here, but if we can get to the finish line in this, and you have a chance to be here again next weekend. This is as deep and as tough a regional as I've been a part of. I've lost track of how many of these I've been in. They're not easy. I think the seeding, you can almost throw this out the window in this particular event. You can take the RPIs and you can chunk all of that at this time of year. And I think ours is as difficult as any that I saw as these things rolled through with the bracketing. So everybody in it, including us, our hands are completely full with difficulty and talent and challenges.
I do want to talk about one regional you've been a part of, and that was your last one as a player. And lead up to this interview, Coach, I wanted to see, when was the last time you played at Dick Howser Stadium as a player? And lo and behold, I don't know if you know this, but it was 30 years ago today, May the 30th, 1994. It was your Seminoles taking on BYU, punching your ticket to Omaha for the last time in the Tallahassee Regional. And I'm just wondering, 30 years ago, you had professional baseball in your immediate future, but did you ever think that maybe, just maybe, this might be a part of the long-term plan where you could lead a program like yours, like Florida State, out onto that field in a regional setting?
Well, everything you learn in the college game starts with your foundation that Coach Martin provided me, and this program allowed me to be a part of, and I wasn't a heralded recruit. So just to have a chance, when 11 gave me a chance to be on the team, that changed so much in my world. And I grew so much under his watch and the assistant coaches that impacted what I was doing. You always envision things like when you decide to get into coaching, you do think through the opportunities that may exist. And no, I didn't know that this was ever going to be one. And I'm fortunate that it was. And we have the best fans and following and atmosphere of anywhere I've ever been. I've coached in the SEC. I've seen it all. And that's what means the most to me when I reflect on not only what it felt like 30 years ago, but what it feels like now, and looking to tomorrow and beyond, what the people around the program mean and the energy and the passion they bring to the table as they watch these guys perform. And that dates way back. Some of the people they're the same folks that were here when I was kicking it around out there at shortstop, and we're going to see a lot of them in the stands tomorrow and through the weekend. So it's really a special place. It's the most important thing for me, and I want to see our guys perform and let the fans continue to enjoy the passion and the way these guys have played the game dating back through the middle of February.
We'll get to the matchup with Stetson specifically in just a moment, but you just got done saying that this could be the most difficult field, regional field across the country. And so for folks that are going to be either attending the games this weekend or if they're going to be watching on television, all the games as these 4 teams battle each other, what do you see out of Alabama and UCF? And generally speaking, what can folks expect out of these 4 teams in the Tallahassee Regional?
Well, everybody's a little bit different. Like Stetson's very athletic. They run the bases. Alabama, good quality pitching depth, dynamic offensively. UCF gives you a little bit of everything. The bunting game probably more in play for them than some of the other teams. But everybody's got their own personality. As you get into it, like regardless of what you see on paper, the game evolves differently than you may expect. And the personality and the personnel on a team, sometimes it doesn't play out to match the stats and match the things you think you could have going into the game. So we tend to look this time of the year at what positions our personnel most suitably to get to the finish line and deliver the result in a tournament. It is, in essence, a weekend of baseball, but it's different than a 3-game series against the same opponent. So when we look at how we map it out, knowing our pitching, like you're going to see Dorsey tomorrow start it, and then we've got the whole arsenal available out of the bullpen. Like the bullpen's as fresh as it's been. We didn't play all week. We played a long time into Sunday, but we didn't have a midweek game. So you're really as fresh as you get. Jamie has clearly shown us the most length out of the start. So we thought throwing him in the Saturday game gave you a chance to hopefully lengthen him out. He's clearly going to be really fresh. And then you're going to have to recycle guys that threw Friday later in the event. So having some length in the second game for our situation seems like it gave us the best chance to get through it. It's not really who we're playing. Everybody in this is good. It's really what we have. So we didn't want to get stuck in a situation where we almost felt like we had to staff or piggyback guys 2 days in a row or 3 days in a row. It still may get to that, but you have the opportunity to try to align it with your personnel now.
So was this a tough call this week to line it up that way, 1-2, or did you kind of know in advance that if you're in a position where you can host and you can dictate, first pitches, and I'll ask a question about that in a little bit about early versus late. But was this an easier call in that sense about lining it up with Dorsey going 1 and then Jamie pitching on Saturday?
Yeah, we sat and talked about it a lot. I'm not going to say it was easy. It's not easy. You just want it to be the right thing for your personnel and your staff. That's the most important thing, is what we have in that locker room and how that group can get to the end game result of finding a way to win this with what we have. It wasn't about any one of the opponents. Like, all of the opponents are extremely good. So it wasn't really, there's no matchup thought at all. This is a personnel thought. And we felt like trying to staff one of the games up front and length in the middle, and then you're going to have to staff and work your way through the other ones. It's not saying we can't get good starts out of some guys, but you have to go into it with what you've seen most consistently out of the personnel. So that's how we aligned it.
And then related to that, you earn the right for dealer's choice of how to lay out when you play on Friday, when you play your first game. So going with that noon start against Stetson, was that about space, time, recovery to put yourself in the best position to be successful for the weekend, or was it some other reason that you decided to go with the first game of the regional?
No, Tom, that's right. It's that you get out of the gates and play that game. And we all know this time of year with the storms and the weather and the lightning, the chances of getting out of the gate and getting that game completed is probably better the earlier you do it. So then you get to see the other two teams play, and the losing teams have to come back and play early the next day, and the winning teams play later. So in essence, you do find yourself in a night game if you can somehow win. And if you don't, you're not having to jump back from a 7:00 start, or I've started games at 9:00 at night in these things, to flip around. You're trying to make sure you protect and align with what you feel like gives your players, your athletes, the best chance to have sustained success in a lengthy event.
That makes total sense. Coach, just a question about your lineup and then one about Stetson before we let you go. But this, in terms of power, this group 1 through 9 this year has been amongst the most powerful dating back to your time in the 90s. The home runs they're hitting left and right this year. Did you anticipate from fall ball, or maybe before the season started, that this could be this good of a lineup in terms of 1 through 9? Again, there's power in a lot of places. James Tibbs is the ACC Player of the Year, but you've got a lot of players with more than a half dozen home runs, more than 10 home runs. Did you know that was possible before the season started?
Yeah, I did. You recruit this. So this time last year, we're recruiting it, and you're trying to build it, and you're trying to find left-handed bats. You're trying to find right-handed balance in there. Clearly, the right-handed hitter is a little easier to find than the left-handed hitter. And then Faro's a switch hitter. And when you build this thing, it has a nice rhythm and flow to it because I like to go left, right if I can. You can't always do that, but we really come close to doing that. And you have Jackson West, a left-handed hitter, Holbrook's a right-handed hitter. Max Williams has been a big part of it. You have Diamez. So it really lines up on paper to look how you want it to look. Then when you get into fall practice and you see the capability and the intent that some of these guys have with what they're doing at the plate, you start to realize that you have a chance to have a damaging offensive group. The extra base hit, the home run, those are huge. I think the caliber of pitching in college baseball, I know the numbers may not tell you that, but with how professional baseball shrunk the draft and shrunk teams, there's older, better pitchers in the game right now, and there's older, better hitters. I know the ball seems really hot, so it looks more offensive, but it's still not easy to string 6 hits together against the arms we see. So the extra base hit and that explosive capability adds a dimension to the offense that clearly helps as the games are played at a higher level.
It also seems like the strike zone's been tightened a little bit too this year, especially. But I'm sure that's a frustrating thing. Go ahead. You were nodding.
It seems like as we've used the TrackMan to evaluate, and all of this information that's plugged in behind home plate goes right to Major League Baseball, and the umpiring review crew has that data, it has shrunk east to west a little bit. And I think what we've seen in the big leagues as they got into the grading through the TrackMan first is I think the strike zone has increased to the north a little bit. So I feel like as we keep using these metrics to evaluate the umpires, I think we'll slowly see that strike zone raise a little bit to maybe make up for some of the side to side that has dissipated in recent years. I'm all in favor of the up and down strike. It's hittable. There were times when a pitch 8 inches off the plate that was thrown well, that was caught well, was a strike. It's not hittable. At least something a little up and a little down is able to be hit, where some of them at times that were so far off the plate clearly were not hittable. So I think we have to find that. And in the offensive game, clearly right now is exciting. The ball's hot. So I think the more we use this system of grading, I think we'll see our zone maybe top to bottom increase. It needs to be based on the hitter. The TrackMan box doesn't change width-wise, right? But
right.
If Aaron Judge is up and then Altuve's up, is that box top to bottom the same? So we still have to grow with how we're using the modern technology to evaluate and grade this stuff.
Yeah, you're certainly right. There were some times where it seemed like the 97 NLCS, that Leon Hernandez start, where there were just unhittable pitches being called in the other batter's box, and that can't happen either. So that's understandable. To the game that's right in front of you, you learn the matchup on Monday. How soon did you get into Stetson prep, and what are some keys to come away with a win and start 1-0 in the Tallahassee Regional tomorrow afternoon, Coach?
Well, we've played them twice. Now, we haven't seen the arms. I haven't gotten the information on who they're starting, but they've got really capable starting pitchers that we haven't seen, and they haven't seen some of our arms either. So you're pushing the reset button on a little bit of this, but they're very athletic. They have a savviness about them, like they play the game the right way with energy, very well coached. Should have beaten us twice. Like we escaped here. That one game was one of the strangest games we played. I think it was a 1-0 game that took about 45 minutes. I don't know what was going on, but it was weird. And clearly they beat up on us down there. So athletic, rangy, talented. They've got some balance in the lineup, and they've got a lot of arms. I think it's probably like us. We have to manage and mix and match a little bit, and they have the ability to do it. And they've given us fits, and they're really, really good. So's Alabama, and so's UCF. But you know what? Our team's played well. We're talented too. So this thing is, you're in the starting gates, and the 4 horses are about to run out of here, and let's see what happens.
Coach, 30 years and 1 day later, from player to head coach of Florida State baseball, just your emotions and what you're going to expect out of that crowd and what you need out of that crowd this weekend.
You know, it's funny. Out of the crowd, I need the exact same thing. Out of myself, the things I'm thinking about here as the event, I still feel responsibility to make sure this event is a good experience for the other teams in it, the other coaches, families that are in it, other teams, fans that are in it. Like, this is something I take some ownership in, and I want it to look right to everybody. And I want the game day experience to be right. So those are things as a player that you never really thought about for a minute. But as you evolve into the coaching profession and you look at the program as a whole, I want this entire operation event to be first class and done correctly. Then when you roll out, you want the product that you're responsible for putting on the field as a head coach to be frontline, talented, complete. You just want to showcase what you've seen the guys do all year. So totally different look and viewpoint, player, coach. But man, the fans, that's the constant that you want here at Florida State. We need the animals on it, and we need this place packed.
For the first time in 6 years, Florida State will host a postseason baseball game. It's the first time in his head coaching career. Head coach Link Jarrett, thank you so much for making the time for us here on Warchant TV today, and good luck to you this weekend. Our thanks to Florida State head coach Link Jarrett for that excellent interview in which he got in depth. I like that nugget, too, about the strike zone and how he thinks that while it has gotten tighter, and it most certainly has, this is much closer to a major league strike zone in the college game, he believes it's going to go a little bit more north-south in the years to come. Hopefully Florida State has the stuff to just blow it by Stetson, Alabama, and UCF with more regularity this weekend. And, of course, the bats come to life as they typically do inside Dick Howser Stadium for Florida State to be able to advance to a Super Regionals. And then next week on the Monday Smash, we can break down Florida State's successful weekend and who they might be facing for a chance at Omaha. We hope that's in the cards for the Noles, but we do thank Link Jarrett for his time here on the Monday Smash on a Thursday night. The Warchant Top 40 is next. This is myself and Ira Schofel breaking down the first five, I should say, players in the Warchant Top 40 who made the cut. We will tell you there is no number 40 because two players tied at number 39. Here is the list, and here is our discussion of the Warchant Top 40 right here on the Monday Smash special edition on a Thursday night presented by State Farm agent Russ Voorhis. We are now into the top 40. If you tuned in and saw the kids who missed the cut, it's time for those who are on the correct side of Warchant's top 40 players for Florida State football in 2024. Alongside the managing editor of Warchant.com, he is Ira Schofel. He helped compile this whole list. My name is Tom Lang, and it's time to bring you the players that are in Florida State's top 40. And Ira, the criteria for this, as a reminder to everybody out there, how you doing today, and then the criteria for how we put this list together. Is this about combine? Is this about speed, or is this about something else?
Yeah, it's about something else. And I guess like beauty's in the eye of the beholder. I'm sure all 7 of us panelists probably have slightly different ways of going about it. But the idea is not to pick the 40 best players or the 40 most talented players. The idea is the 40 players that we feel like, so you've got to come up with, we each come up with our own list of 40, the 40 players that we believe have the biggest chance to have an impact, the biggest impact on this team. So you start off with the top 5 or 10 players. Those probably are your most talented, most experienced top starters, quarterbacks, starting running backs, those kinds of guys. And then you start working your way down, and then you got to make decisions. Sometimes it's based on a position of need. Like maybe this linebacker is not the best linebacker in the world, but maybe he's so much better than everybody else you have that you put him a little bit higher. Or maybe if you've got a ton of offensive guards, maybe you don't value an starting offensive guard as high because you have other guys who can play that position. So there's a lot of that kind of going on here. But again, the idea is to the 40 most important, most impactful players, and everybody has their own list. And then we combine the 7 with our grading scale, and then we come up with the composite list.
So that list, again, the panelists this year, 7 panelists. This is the order that we have it in our little sheet behind the scenes. Matt LaSerre, Jeff Cameron, myself, Corey Clark, Gene Williams, Aslan Hadravandi, and, of course, Ira, right here on the right side of the screen. So with that said, let's put it up on the screen here. Here we go. We don't actually have a number 40 ranked player. It's a tie at 39 this year with a defensive tackle and a tight end. 2 new arrivals, in fact, on the bottom of the screen there, between transfer Grady Kelly and early enrollee tight end Landon Thomas. We'll get to Landon in just a minute. I'm just going to read off this list for people that we have on the podcast feed because we do put these on audio as well. Number 36 is Quindarius Jones at corner. Number 37 is running back Keziah Holmes. I look forward to speaking on Keziah. I've got thoughts on him. Number 38, defensive tackle Daniel Lyons. Number 39, this is a tie, is defensive tackle Grady Kelly. He's the transfer, and of course Landon Thomas also at number 39. So, Ira, this is a bit that I think we're going to roll out a little bit more often this year. It's called Explain Yourself, and there's a little video clip
No rational person would do as you have done. Explain yourself.
And that clip demands that you explain yourself, because Landon Thomas, as a true freshman, you have him just outside your top 25. Most of us on staff have him in the top 40, which is high praise for a true freshman. But number 26 on the list, nobody else in the top 35 for Landon Thomas. State your case, man.
First of all, Landon, I'm your guy. You wouldn't have made the top 40 or the top 39 without my vote. So just remember that, Landon, is you're catching all those touchdowns in 2024. To me, it's a combination of two things. One, I thought he was super impressive. I think we all did. Everyone that watched him in practice this spring as an early enrollee, he's very impressive. I mean, there's a reason some people thought he was the number one tight end in the country last year. But a couple things that made me believe he's going to be a big part of this offense were, some of the things he did as a pass catcher, his combination of size and speed. And then he showed some physicality that I was surprised by. I mean, he looks like a grown man. A lot of times guys come in when they're true freshmen and they might have a ton of talent, might have a great frame. They're going to be great at some point in their career, but they come in looking like a freshman. I don't think Landon Thomas looks like a freshman. I think he's put on weight since he's been in Tallahassee. I've seen some physicality out of him. I don't know that he's ready to take on defensive ends one-on-one, but I think he's a willing blocker. And I think because he's uniquely skilled in that tight end group, I think he's going to be out there a ton. I think he's going to be out there a lot with Kyle Morlock. And I think when you look at those other tight ends, Jackson West is probably your number 2 tight end on this team because of what he can do as a blocker and probably all around. But I have a feeling Landon Thomas is actually going to make more big plays and be a bigger factor in the passing game. So I gave him the nod, and I put him up high because I think he's going to get a lot of opportunities, and I think he's ready for it.
I could see it. Again, this is not a loaded wide receiver room. So if you're talking about formations that Florida State's going to roll out there could be some larger bodies. And the tight end position in Mike Norvell's offense is so varied. There is a slot in terms of skill set that Landon Thomas fits that maybe Florida State doesn't have. If Ira's right on this one, just ask him for stock advice next January and February, because he's buying low on Landon Thomas. Next up is Grady Kelly on that list, defensive tackle from Colorado State. This guy has to be a part of the top 4, we would think, in terms of that defensive tackle rotation. Ira, everybody on staff had him around the same area, and so this is a very I'd call it chalk result for Grady Kelly. Your thoughts on him and maybe the work that he's going to get done in the summer and in the fall in terms of development for Florida State, and where you think he's going to slot out?
Yeah, I think what we saw at him in the spring was that he's what Florida State probably thought they were getting when they brought him out of Colorado State, where he had started 22 games the last 3 years, was not a dominant player out there. I think he was second team all conference, according to at least one service. I think Phil Steele had him second team all conference. And, he's a guy, like you said, he'll be a rotation piece. I didn't think he was markedly better in terms of like upside over like a KJ Sampson. And to me, that's why I didn't value him as high as maybe sometimes a second team defensive tackle might be valued higher. I just think that they've got a lot of guys kind of that are similar in terms of their ability to help in that second and third team defensive line. I think you got him, Daniel Lyons, and that's why I also didn't have Daniel Lyons super high either. I just think a lot of those guys are pretty interchangeable. I like KJ Sampson a lot. Tomiwa. How about that? Tom Lang? Tomiwa Durajaye is the West Virginia transfer. Is also, I think, going to be in that mix. He played some end and tackle in the spring. So I don't love their overall depth at defensive tackle, but I also I think he's a nice piece of it. But I wasn't blown away by him in the spring.
I put too much weight in what I see in practices. So for me, typically guys in the trenches are much higher, like relative to the staff. Like, for example, Grady Kelly, I have all the way up at 31, one of the higher slots on the staff for him. I know that Corey has him in the 20s as well at 29. And I've got Daniel Lyons on my list at 33. And so, again, Daniel Lyons comes in just ahead of Grady Kelly. This is largely on the strength, Daniel Lyons' ranking, of 2 staff members, Matt and Jeff, having him at 25. They've got him really, really high. And my guess would be the thinking there is, if you lose Darrell Jackson or Josh Farmer for a series or two, who's the next guy up. They think it's Daniel Lyons because of his ability to be disruptive. That has to be the reason. Ira, this is not somebody who's 350 pounds who's just going to take on 2 blockers and be a run stuffer. Daniel Lyons is more of an athlete that plays defensive tackle. I know he didn't make your cut. I'm one of 3 to have him on the list, but that has to be the reasoning behind why Daniel Lyons would make your list. Grady Kelly is a little bit more of a run stopper. Daniel could be making more plays, more impactful plays, maybe as a pass rusher on third down, interior pass rusher on third down, that type of player. But what have you seen out of Daniel Lyons?
Yeah, and I think he's listed 6'4", 290, so that body type is what you're talking about there. And I think, if you based it on, if we were sitting back here a year or two ago, you and I were super high on Daniel Lyons. I think we watched him in practice and we're impressed by some of the way he won some of those one-on-one pass rushing drills, even as a true freshman, and certainly last year at times. And he played a good bit last year. He was in that rotation at defensive tackle, so that's valuable. When you've got guys coming back that have played defensive tackle at this level, that's a big thing. So I think he's important. I just didn't think he had a great spring. Like I was looking for more based on, again, what we saw at him a couple years ago. I thought by now he'd be kind of making the leaps we saw Josh Farmer make. And I just haven't seen that. I think the talent is there, and maybe he was slowed by something in the spring. I just don't know, but I thought he would be a more impactful player in the spring. So that's why I didn't go with him, because I think they've got a lot of other guys that are going to be on that second team defense and second team offense that are going to make a big impact. So that's just kind of, he's in a group of guys. I probably had 10 or 12 of them that in most years I think would have been no doubt in the top 40, but there's a glut. Like once you pass 25, there's like 25 or 30 guys left that are all kind of fighting for those positions in the top 40.
So we go up next to the running back position, slotted at 37. This is Keziah Holmes, and I've got a cop to this. We'll play the clip because I need to explain myself.
No rational person would do as you have done. Explain yourself.
Only 4 staff members out of our 7 panelists put Keziah Holmes on their list, Ira. Only one put him as high as 21, and that was me. Everybody else has Keziah more towards the fringe.
You love Keziah.
I do. And this is my Landon Thomas style pick. And I go to war. I go to bat for him. I'm kind of blasphemous when it comes to the running back rankings compared to the rest of the staff. I have Keziah as my top running back. I have Toafili down at 22. And
wow.
It's because the room is loaded. I think it waters down everything. It's not about Lawrence's lack of skills, or I'm cool on Lawrence while everybody else is saying that he's going to be a big time player. I think they're all going to be big-time players. I got Roydell Williams right in that mess together. As I just put them all together in a group. I said, I don't know. They're going to sort themselves out. But what I did see from Keziah Holmes in limited action last fall was some of the breakaway speed and also the ability to run over guys that I don't know that Florida State has in a whole ton of a lot of other players. Like I think Roydell Williams 100% can run dudes over and make players miss in open fields. But I don't know that he can pull away the way that Keziah can. Toafili has the speed, and he's got the hands, and I think he's going to be an incredibly important player for those reasons. But I don't know that he can run a dude over the way that Keziah Holmes can. And I was very impressed, Ira. This is probably where I'm putting a little bit too much weight. But his skills in pass protection, at least in the showcase, the way he blitz pickup, the way he handled linebackers one-on-one and was able to drive them back, I think he's going to gain a lot of trust from the coaches, and so therefore I think he's going to gain a lot of reps. Maybe 21 is a little bit high for Keziah Holmes. Certainly compared to the rest of the staff, it's 100% too high. But Keziah, you're welcome. You would not have made this list had I not put you all the way up at number 21. Why am I nuts, Ira, to have Keziah that high?
I don't think you are, but you outlined exactly the conundrum, I guess, with that running back group is, like, spoiler alert, Cam Davis didn't make our list, and I think we might be kicking ourselves at the end of the year. I think they really like Cam Davis. I think they're excited about what he could do, but the challenge is they have like 7 running backs. And so it's hard to know how those carries are going to split up. I think the rest of us went with Toafili higher because just it's the chalk. I mean, he's been in the system now for 5 years. He's also good in pass protection. People might not think it because of his size, but he'll put his nose in there. He knows all the protections. He's so talented in different ways as a pass catcher and as running back. I don't think he'll be off the field very much at all. I think if they want to get other running backs in, I think he may be out at wide receiver. And so, that's why I would have him higher, because I is a really nice player, man. There's no question. I don't dispute that. And I agree with you to the extent that he's probably more like a Trey Benson in terms of the breakaway speed and the power than anybody else maybe they have, other than maybe Cam Davis. But I just don't know that they're going to make that jump to him, because they also have Toafili and they have Roydell Williams, and so I can't wait to see what they do with that running back room in terms of dividing carries. But at the end of the day, I still think Toafili is going to be the number one guy. But you make a good case, buddy. You make a good case.
Well, I don't know that it's going to be a case that's won, signed, sealed, and delivered in August or September. I think this is one you got to let this cook. This is something you let marinate for a little while. You let it stir, sit in the crock pot, and I think by the end of the season, maybe it does look wise. But I could be dead wrong. And in that January video, I've got to explain myself again as to why I'm just so dead wrong. Quindarius Jones rounds out this particular segment, the 40 to 36 numbers, and you can find the written piece on warchant.com. I republished that in the middle of the week. Quindarius Jones made 5 panelist lists. 2 panelists he did not make the top 44 were Matt LaSerre and Ira Schoffel. His highest ranking was 29th. That was Aslan, who put him at 29. I had him personally, Ira, at 38, right on that fringe. So I think we're in line there. Just because you don't make the top 40 doesn't mean you weren't 41st or 42nd. Okay. This is somebody who could make a splash, but why did Quindarius just miss the cut for you in a year where Florida State's very deep?
Because I'm a dummy. No, he should have been kind of where you had him. I should have had him at least in the top 40. But again, man, I just kind of kept going back and forth. I kept moving people into that 30 to 40 and out of that top 30 to 40 and really just kind of kept juggling and going back and forth. I think the reason ultimately I left him off, sorry, Quindarius, is because they do have so many good corners. So to me, if he wasn't available for some reason, I think you have other guys you can plug in there. I really like Jabril Rawls. I think he's come a long way in the year he's been on campus. Edwin Joseph and Charles Lester and these freshmen DBs are Kai Bates. These freshman DBs are impressive. Jamari Howard before he got hurt, and so to me it comes down to that, especially those fringe players. Is if they weren't available, how big of an impact would it be? And I feel like there's other guys that could play there. Having said that, Quindarius is probably one of the 10 most talented football players on this team. I mean, he is a freak show, I think. People saw it on that 50-yard kickoff return or block field goal return for a touchdown last year. We've seen it in practice and one-on-ones. The dude I think he's got a chance to be elite with that length at 6'2". He's got good ball skills. I mean, I love Quindarius. So I really hate that I did that, but I got to own it and wear it. So I'll do that because I think he should definitely be in the top 40.
He's a freak of an athlete, and he's so smooth for the size. Typically, Ira, you see a member of the secondary at that height. They're violent, they're choppy, they're not smooth and fluid. That's what jumps off the page to me about Quindarius. But
you expect him to be real grabby and all that. Man, he can play in the open field and run with these receivers and make plays.
If you're 6'2", you profile in the slot or you profile at safety, and you're a bruiser. You're Jamie Robinson, but man, he's smooth. I don't know how else to explain it, and he also can explosively, elevate and get up and high point the football. But we'll see if the reps are out there for him. One other guy that confused the issue, Ira, was Amarian Cooper coming back to Florida State. And teaser, he did make the top 40 list. Perhaps we will be discussing a player like Amarian Cooper here pretty soon on the Warchant Top 40. Actually, coming up next on the Warchant Top 40, we've got our first special teams player. We've got an offensive lineman, a wide receiver, a linebacker, and a member of the secondary that we just might have teased. So this is shaping up to be a really interesting year, Ira. And before we sign off, just your thoughts on how difficult this year was compared to maybe some other ones, because this is the first time people are hearing from you on the top 40.
Yeah, and when the top 40 first started at Warchant, I was still back at my old job at the newspaper. You were at the radio station, and those 13 and 14 teams were loaded, but we weren't here. We weren't taking part in the voting. So most of my time doing the voting has been from 2015 on, and maybe 2014 I might have been here, but definitely not before that. And this was by far the most challenging this has been. Not just, it was very challenging in the top 10. The top 10, a lot of times, is kind of cut and dry. The last couple of years, Jordan Travis, he's number one, and you kind of go from there. even the top 7, 8 picks, like maybe 1 or 2 guys are out of order, but you know who they are. I think in this list, people are going to see there are guys that some people have in the top 5 or 8 that other people do not. And so it's going to make for some interesting calculations. And then as it goes on, it just gets tougher. Again, sometimes, when we're around 30, especially those last few years before Coach Norvell got here in his first 2 years, once you started getting to about 25 or 30, you're trying to come up with reasons to put guys in the top 40. Like maybe there's a case you can make to get that guy in your top 40. Now it's like, how can you keep guys out of your top 40? And so it's just it was really challenging. I hope people enjoy reading it. And I think by the end of it, you'll see that, it doesn't necessarily mean this team's going to go 13-0 again or even win the ACC, but they certainly have the talent to be in the conversation.
Yeah, this was I teased this on the Just Missing the Cut video. Our sixth player, number 6 player, got 2 first place votes.
Right.
That doesn't ever happen. Usually a guy who garners a number 1 overall vote is going to be in your top 3. I mean, think about, some of the years Florida State had with we're 14 with Jameis. Like Jameis was going to be number 1, but then behind him you have Rashad Green. He might get a first place vote, might come for Eddie Goldman or might come for Josh Sweat or Jalen Ramsey. Like those guys are going to be in the top 3, top 4. Florida State, at least at the top, Ira, is loaded enough that the number 6 player in our top 40, which you're going to hear in some time now down the road, had 2 number 1 overall votes. It's going to be a fascinating debate here on Warchant TV. Again, hit the like button underneath the video. Subscribe to the channel. We will release every one of our number 1 through number 40 players on this channel. So if this is your first video, head on back and see how we count it all down and arrive at number 1. For Ira Schofel, who has put in the written piece on the site right now, you can find it at warchant.com where you can see the voting breakdown. That's on warchant.com. My name is Tom Lang. We will talk to you next time right here on Warchant TV for the 2024 Florida State Top 40. Really enjoyed that discussion and look forward to how this list is going to roll out over the next few weeks. And it's not just going to be me and Ira or me and Gene on all of these videos. Are going to be collaborations across the Warchant multimedia footprint. The guys from Wake Up Warchant certainly will be doing some talking about that. Matt LaSerre is going to get involved in his first year compiling names for the top 40. The Jeff Cameron Show will certainly talk about the top 40 as time goes along. I love this project, and especially so this year. It's just there's a lot of players to choose from. And for each and every one of us, we're going to have at least one player by the end of the season where we go, what the heck was I thinking? I had that guy too low or I had that guy too high. The list will continue to roll out over the next couple of weeks here on warchant.com and Warchant TV. Now it's time to pivot over to Florida State football recruiting. There is a official visit weekend coming up this week for Florida State, but it starts a series of several weekends into the month of June where the Noles are looking to put a stamp on their 2025 class. They don't have a ton of commitments yet, but they have a ton of interest from blue chippers, high-level 4-stars, elite players and 5-stars at multiple positions. Florida State will be hosting those players over the next 4 weekends. And to break that all down, here's lead recruiting analyst for Warchant.com and Warchant TV, Michael Langston, our recruiting reporter and team reporter, Matt LaSerre, and On3's very own Josh Newberg.
Wow, what a week. What a week to come on. I mean, the start of official visit season, which leads us into commitment season, which takes us right into flip seasons. So we love it. It's a good time to be here.
Yeah, that's what I was saying, Josh. Like, yeah, there's going to be a lot of commits. There's going to be a lot of decommits. But before we get into everything, but talk about the Elite Series you guys held. Phenomenal event. What was kind of some of the takeaways you had from that event? Because obviously, incredible showing by the whole On3 team with that.
Oh, it was great. Me and you, Mike, we've been doing this for almost 20 years now, and I can honestly say that the On3 Elite event was one of the best events I've ever been to, and that includes all the camps and combines, the 7-on-7s that we go to, the opening, all the events that we used to, Gridiron Kings. This On3 Elite event, I think, or I know, is going to be the recruiting event of the summer moving forward. We've been through some phases of recruiting. We saw the camp and combine season, which led into the opening, which Nike owned that event for almost 10 years. And that was like the epicenter of summer recruiting. And moving forward, at least for the foreseeable future, the On3 Elite Series is going to be the summer recruiting event that everybody talks about, that everybody goes to. And just to be a part of it these last 2 years was amazing. I think it's only going to get better. And one of the cool things about it was the fact that there's no competition, these guys are all here to learn, to listen, to get to know each other. Some great speakers, Will Compton, Jimmy Sexton, a bunch of brands were there. Ronnie Brown, the former Auburn running back, now works for Morgan Stanley. So he was helping those guys with some financial talk. But overall, just to be with all these recruits and their parents and to understand what these guys are going through, what they're dealing with in modern day recruiting, because Mike, recruiting has changed so much since the days of you and I going out to Oregon to cover the opening. Now they're learning financial literacy. They're learning about life after football. They're learning about investments. And it's just, it's incredible to see, but I also think it's very necessary as well.
Yeah, no doubt. It sounds exciting. We know everyone from On3 did an incredible job. Our staff was there with Aslan being there, but just having everyone there covering it was really exciting. It's really informative. Now getting into FSU before we get into the specific guys, but just talk about just the state of what they're doing, Josh. Whether recruiting or just in general. You obviously were on the beat for a while, so you were in the early processes of what Norvell was doing. But just what's your kind of state of just feeling of the state of recruiting with FSU?
Florida State's coming. I mean, I think that they have 4 commitments right now, but it's about to get exciting for Florida State recruiting, and you can feel the build up, and we all know that June 21 weekend is the weekend that all FSU fans have their eyes on. Huge official visit weekend, but we're going to start seeing some sorting out, and we're going to start seeing it. But talking to the guys here, Mike Norvell and his staff, they seem very focused. They're very dialed into the guys that they want. The guys that they're in on, who did Tavian Wallace and Vernell Brown and Kalik Lockett. And, a lot of these guys, they just have a great it's good to see Mike Norvell so hands-on. They have a great relationship with Mike Norvell. They always mention Mike Norvell along with their position coach or their primary recruiter. And it's because Mike Norvell takes a hands-on approach to the guys that they want. And, we've seen Florida State recruiting has morphed into this high school / transfer portal way of thinking. It's not all one or the other. We know Mike Norvell is considered one of the transfer portal kings, and that comes into play when you talk about roster management. Really, recruiting is just the acquisition of talent, and however you get it done is how you get it done. Florida State's used the transfer portal very well. They continue to do so, and they continue to recruit the high school level really well. And I think that, you want to see them get into that top 10 right now. I think they're sitting at number 12, but like I said, only 4 commitments. We know Florida State's not going to enter the fall with only 4 commitments. I mean, we could see another 10, 12, 13, 15 commitments by the end of summer. It wouldn't be crazy to see them at 19 or 20 commitments by the end of August.
Did you kind of sense this when you're covering on the FSU beat of when you're around Norvell? Like, man, these guys is there a certain thing they do that really just captured your mind before this thing took off?
Yeah, I think if you remember back when we first started covering Mike Norvell and the implementation of his staff, remember there was a lot of concern that, hey, Mike Norvell doesn't have the recruiters to recruit Florida. Yeah. Well, guess what? That kind of all equalized. All you got to do is win. So now they can recruit Florida again. And I think we've seen the evolution of that. The relationships are there, when Mike, and part of it was when he hired his staff, they were a losing program and they didn't hire a ton of recruiting prowess in the South. And that seemed like it was going to be a concern. But I think we saw the ability to identify players that fit your system ended up kind of winning out over the location of where these coaches came from. And ultimately they do this at the high school level. They do it at the transfer portal level. And it's why you see the roster built the way that it is and why you're seeing the success that they have. And if you talk to anybody behind the scenes right now, this staff is excited about this roster as they have been about any roster that they've started the year with. And I've even qualified that by saying, like, are you saying this knowing that you lost Jordan Travis? Like, do you remember how many mistakes Jordan Travis erased because of his ability to get out of trouble and do all this? And like, I was like, wasn't that part of the roster? So, but they feel top to bottom, that this is the best roster that they've had entering a season. So I'm excited to see what they do. I think that the recruiting will take shape not only in the summer but also in the fall, because that's what you do with teams that win. They attract more recruits, and you can kind of go at a little bit slower pace if you feel confident that your fall is really going to come in and go down the way that you think it's going to go down.
Yeah, and I would agree with a lot of that, especially even the FSU side of it. That this is their best roster, because does it have all elite talent? No, but does it have great talent, top to
And depth.
bottom, all depth? That's what they have. They have so much depth this year. They have more depth than I can remember. Probably I'd have to go all the way back to 2013 to find a depth with what the level they have. But Matt, I guess chime into that as well. Just I know you were new coming in here, but I'm sure you followed FSU kind of where, the maturation of, the last 2 years. But I guess even talk just about the last 2 years. What have you seen with FSU that's really changed?
I mean, I think in general, you're also going after like South Florida a lot more. I mean, with the addition of Pat Surtain on the staff last year, that's been huge, right? That DB class last year was pretty good, really good, trending for a lot of guys now. And even just that American Heritage connection has been huge for FSU, even through the portal, bringing in Marvin Jones Jr., Earl Little. You have all these guys that are just coming from having known him. It was their high school head coach. And now it's trickling into recruiting as well when you have Byron Lewis trending to FSU. Dia Bell just got offered down there, 2026 quarterback. And it just has been a huge – I think Pat Surtain, that hire, at least because I've seen – because I think I came on to Warchant probably right after that. I think that's been huge for them, especially recruiting.
Right. From a development standpoint, Matt, when you see them, there's a lot that they've done development-wise. I mean, I think the guy that gets – thrown to the wolves, and he does so much, and he is so impactful in the team is Coach JP, John Papias. But Papias, if I'm saying it wrong, I'm sorry. I'll let Josh say it right. But Coach JP, as I call him, but I mean, he has done a phenomenal job. There's a lot of development on the staff, but talk about that, of how that's helped FSU throughout the process, not just having Pat, but guys like JP, guys like Randy Shannon did a really good job with their linebackers. So I talk about how that's helped kind of them involved in recruiting.
Yeah, I mean, if you go and look at Randy Shannon, you go to the linebackers, watching Azon's interview with Tavion Wallace this past week at the Elite Series, he even mentions how Kalen DeLoach, right, same area near him, how much they talk about it and how they talk about Randy Shannon. They talk about the program in general. Like, that's huge when it comes down to that, I guess. Yeah. Coach JP, another big one. When you're looking at development and you have guys like Jermaine Johnson, Jared Verse, Patrick Payton's now going to be one of the best edge rushers in the ACC in the country. That's huge. The way they've been developing, even if it's out of the portal, has been big for FSU. You can still develop guys even if it's a transfer. That's where I think people start to not really realize a whole lot is these guys have had 2-3 years of eligibility when they come into FSU. So that kind of helps them when they actually get developed, right? Like, you think Jared Verse came in from Albany already knowing everything and being the best in the first-round draft pick? No. He worked with JP. He worked with everyone, and he developed and became one of the best in the country.
Yeah. Josh, certainly I've been on the inside scoop. We've talked about different, targets and stuff. But I guess the first thing people are going to want to know, because they've heard my view, but they want to know, who do you think, is the most likely in the summer going into commit? Because there's so many, 23 official visitors in the 21st that we talked about. I think 9, 8, maybe 4 different weeks in June. But who are some of the guys that you're looking at? You know what? I feel like these guys could possibly pop for FSU.
Well, I'll start with one of the big names that was at the event here in Nashville, and that's Tavion Wallace out of Jessup, Georgia, one of the top linebackers, not just in the South, but the entire country. And, Tavion Wallace grew up a Florida Gator fan. His dad, I asked him, I sat down, you're from South Georgia. How did you grow up a Gator fan? He goes, my dad was a Gator fan. And so I was a Gator fan. And he said he loved him growing up, but now it's time to take a look at things a little bit differently. And the Gators are right there. He said that probably Georgia is in the 2 spot, but I don't know. I kind of think the Gators are in that spot, but regardless, we know Florida State leads in this one. You got Georgia, you got UF competing for him. That's going to be a fun one, but we saw Steve Wiltfong drop a recruiting prediction machine pick in just yesterday for him. We talked about that yesterday on the Inside Scoop with Steve, but he feels real confident where the Noles stand. Then you got Myron Charles, right, out of Port Charlotte, a position of major need. I love where they sit with him. That seems like it could be a summer commitment. Then you got two big-time offensive linemen. Peyton Joseph, it feels like everything's going the right way for that one, and Josh Petty. Love where they sit for Josh Petty, but he's on campus at Clemson this weekend. And we know this weekend at Clemson is really important because Clemson only does one official visit weekend, in June. That's it. And they get commitments out of it. And I'm not saying I expect Josh Petty to commit, but Mike, we've talked with Josh Petty. We kind of get to know him. He's one of these guys. Well, I could see him at Clemson. I could see him being a Clemson guy, quote unquote. So I still feel real good about where they sit with Josh Petty. But I want to see what happens after this weekend because they could be singing a real different tune coming out of that Clemson visit this weekend. It's a big one. Then we like where they sit with Byron Lewis. Then you look and you see them trending for Zaire Addison, but do you really? I don't feel like they lead for Zaire Addison. Do you?
Yeah, I mean that's a tricky one. I do just the body language he gives off, at least right now. I don't think it's a substantial, like I'm highly confident.
I think it's hard to get a read on him because he's been so many places. I mean, he's from Tampa, Florida, and he's been to UCLA four times this year. Not saying like I think UCLA is going to get him, but we go by the term follow the visits. And if you follow Zaire Addison's visits, you might end up at UCLA with him, but I don't think that's where he's going to end up. It's just he's a tough one to get a read on because he's enjoying the process as he should. But until things kind of slow down for him, I have a hard time really figuring out where FSU stands with him.
Yeah, I wouldn't pinpoint I would put FSU just because one, they were the first school to get in there relationship wise. He is so comfortable with Alex Atkins, and that seems to be a really big thing. And so that's why I kind of lean on FSU. And then two, he's been to FSU like 10 times. He's been there like a lot. But he's been a lot of places, so it's hard to pinpoint because that's what we do is you're looking for a certain indication where it's visits, where it's what they do and how they act. So he's one that's still kind of up in the air there. For me, Gregory Thomas, certainly feel really good about him. All the ones I think Josh mentioned, I would agree with. I am interested to see how these different visits work with Josh Petty and others, but I think it's going to be the best offensive line class that they've had. When they get done with this, I just feel everything is setting up for them to have the best offensive line class.
You got to hold on to Solomon Thomas.
There you go. Yeah,
we know that the Gators are knocking on his door a little bit. But that's natural. He's one of the best in the state, and the Gators should be after him. Here's another one we should talk about: Usman Chroma, because technically he's trending to FSU, right? But is he really trending to FSU?
I don't think he is. I think they've
so
slipped. I think they faded some there. He had a chance to visit FSU in the spring. I think it was on spring break. There at the beach. Went to Miami, but he didn't go to Florida State, supposedly because his friend didn't want to go over there and take the trip. But a lot of times it's like if you want to go, you're going to go. Look, if we were ready to pencil Usman Chroma into Florida State's class in February and March, I think everybody was just jumping the gun because you're right. If he really wanted to go to FSU, he's not going to pass over a trip to the beach to go visit FSU. He's going to go on campus. And hey, it's fine. Not everybody's going to end up at, you can only sign so many guys. You got to find the right ones. And to me, you see him go to Auburn. Now Auburn, it's starting to pick up with Auburn. Now we know he's got interest in Georgia, but Georgia's in on three really good backs: Todd Robinson, Usman Chroma, and Bo Jackson. And I think they probably only have room for two there. So we'll see what happens, but Chroma could very well end up at UGA. So it's kind of hard to see, but you know what? There's a lot of great backs out there. They're in really good shape with Byron Lewis, who's an in-state guy. You probably rather take the in-state guy over somebody from Georgia anyway. So I'm not worried about running back recruiting, but it's kind of funny how, we feel so strongly about something in March and April about Chroma and FSU. And then, maybe it wasn't what we thought, but it takes something like, a situation like that to really understand, okay, maybe he doesn't really value FSU as much as we thought he did. Right. And that's why we tell people, when we say recruiting is fluid, it's definitely is, because when I was leaning after last year after signing them, I'm like, okay, Chroma's going to be their guy, and then Byron Lewis takes a visit, then Byron Lewis takes another visit, and they're like, we hear intel inside from our FSU side that, hey, we really like this kid. And then so it's stuff just changes so frequently. I think they're after Iverson Hayward is another one, Rocket Hayward, who they love, that they offered that will officially visit FSU. So I think the plan, Josh, and I don't know if you agree with this, like I think their plan is to take one pure running back and then one like dynamic athlete type that they feel like they can move, kind of how they do with Ja'Kai Douglas. That's
Yeah,
kind
and
of
they've
the
had
plan.
success in the portal. I mean, I wouldn't worry about running back recruiting at Florida State.
Yeah.
That's kind of something that even when Mike Norvell landed at FSU, everybody took note of what he did at Memphis. He did more with less at Memphis, and now that he's at FSU with all the resources and ability and the transfer portal, the transfer portal has been very helpful with running back recruiting.
Yeah.
They'll find their guy. I'm not worried about it.
It's been a full edition of the Monday Smash presented by State Farm agent Russ Voorhis. Once again, support those who support Warchant, but better yet, support those who support Florida State athletics. That is Russ Voorhis, a true Florida State Seminole. He's got offices in Jacksonville Beach and Orange Park, but if you are listening digitally right now, we'll spell out the URL one more time for Russ Voorhis. That's RUSSVORHIS.com for more information about State Farm agent Russ Voorhis and his services in the state of Florida, Georgia, and Alabama. I want to thank Director Ben Spicer behind the scenes for compiling all of this footage together. We've had a lot of different interviews and features to roll out today that have not been seen yet by the Warchant TV audience. So thanks for getting a first look with us here on the Monday Smash on a special Thursday night. Link Jarrett, head baseball coach of Florida State, thank you for your time. Thank you to Stephen McCartney, the sports information director, for making that happen for us. Thanks to Ira Schofel and the rest of the staff members who compiled the Warchant Top 40 as we rolled that out. He's the usual suspect on the Monday Smash, and I suspect we'll be seeing a lot more of Ira next week. And, of course, to our recruiting roundtable, Michael Langston, Matt LaSerre, and Josh Newberg, thank you all for your time tonight as well. This has been the Monday Smash, presented by State Farm agent Russ Voorhis. Before you leave, make sure to hit the like button underneath the video. Subscribe to Warchant TV. We've got a ton of recruiting content, baseball content coming your way over the next couple of days, as well as live shows too. It's all happening right here at Warchant TV, and head over to warchant.com for more in-depth information. Your first month is always just $1 at warchant.com. For Ben and the crew, I'm Tom. Have a good night, everybody. This has been the Monday Smash on Warchant TV.